What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 38th episode of the PlayStation Drive. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the man himself, Matt Sawinski. Matt, how are you doing on this lovely, lovely Thursday, good sir?
Right now, Ryan, I am on such a high. I just had one of my best runs in Sifu, but we'll talk about that. But I'm jittery, I'm excited, and I'm feeling good. And my birthday is tomorrow, so that's a whole whack of things.
In fact, it's not really tomorrow. It's tomorrow from when we're recording this, but the listeners, it's actually today.
That's right.
So go over in the Discord, go wish Matt a happy birthday today if you're actually listening to this on Friday. Even though I'm sure Matt will be all embarrassed about that, but it doesn't matter, happy birthday. But obviously, let's get into the show proper. Let's clean the garage a little bit. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, you can subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're on all the places you find podcasts. So check us out there. Also, if you have a Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating on there. It definitely helps a long way in supporting the show. And also, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That definitely helps out as well. Also, if you want to see our beautiful faces every single week, heading over to YouTube, youtube.com/YumiCapri. We put up a video version of the show every single Friday morning over there. And of course, like, subscribe, share, ding, 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 ring that bell, just like I'm doing right now with my finger out. If you're watching the video version, ring that bell. And then last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, head over to Patreon, patreon.com/YumiCapri is how you do that. You also get some extra perks, like some exclusive podcasts and some other stuff as well. Well, without further ado, let's grab our 8 tracks, pop them in. It is time for the playlist. And we played some games this week. I know there's some stuff that we're both playing that we can't talk about yet. But besides that, Matt, what did you play this week, my friend?
I have been obsessed with Sifu. I can't stop playing it. It is way too much fun, and it makes me very, very angry. But I think for the first time since this kind of Dark Souls-esque difficulty in games has become more prevalent again, the From Software games I don't really jive with for a number of reasons. But this, for me, even when I'm losing constantly, I genuinely feel like I'm learning and improving and getting better and understanding the game and the flow. So I just had the best run I've ever had as of yet. I finally made it to the 3rd level, which is an accomplishment for me. I got out of the first world, only dying once, which I was very proud of myself. And then the second world, I got my butt handed to me over and over again, but I beat the boss for the first time. I'm 60 going into world 3 right now, so I'm not going to last very long. But it's just the flow of it. The combat is just so much fun. The music is great. The DualSense implementation. There's a section in the second level where there's this hallway with lights kind of jittering on down, and you can actually feel it start at the bottom of the controller and quickly rumble its way up and around. It's so cool. I'm loving it. It's really difficult. Again, it's very frustrating, but if you have kind of the bandwidth to put up with it, it's fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying it. Nice. But that's me.
And yeah, it sounds like for the most part, you're learning as you become, older and wiser, just like the character in the game, Matt. It sounds like a fun experience. It's just one of those things where I'm I don't know if this is really up my alley, so I'm not going to bite on it right away. But who knows? Maybe I'll pick it up sometime later this year and check it out. Maybe if it goes on sale or something like that. Maybe that's kind of what I'm waiting for, especially because I kind of have to budget now with a lot of the games coming out soon. So I can't. Plus, I'm actually moving next month, so I don't want to spend a ton of money or anything like that. So I'm excited to check it out at some point. But go ahead and see what you're going to say.
Also, very quickly, I just want to give a huge shout out to PlayStation Canada. They just sent me over a copy of Uncharted. I got a nice physical disc copy from them. So massive shout out to PlayStation Canada. I'll have updated thoughts on that next week.
Nice. That's awesome. It's very rare that we actually get physical copies of games. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah.
So as for me, honestly, I didn't really play much on PlayStation this week. I actually played a lot of, I'm still playing Taiko Drum Master on Xbox because it's on Game Pass. And it's just because I realized I actually have the PlayStation version of Taiko Drum Master, but there are actually less songs in that version, or there's a different variety of songs than on the Xbox version. And I actually think I like the selection on Xbox more, believe it or not, if that makes any sense. Because they took a lot of the DLC songs that were on the PlayStation version and added them to the Xbox version of the game for some reason. So it's like almost like a better bundle for the same price, which is weird to think about. But also going back to something we talked about last week, and you and I actually talked about this off air, but there was actually a Taiko Drum Master Accessory put out for the drum set, but not on PlayStation. They did one for Nintendo Switch only, and it's like $200 on eBay if you want to go buy one. So, and then they actually just announced a new Taiko Drum Master game yesterday for Switch as well. So I'm hoping maybe that means they, remake that peripheral, but it also means there's not a PlayStation version of that game coming. So I guess still no PlayStation peripheral for Taiko Drum Master.
I was actually curious about that. Does yesterday's announcement of the new one push you any more into actually getting the Switch peripheral? Like, just because you'll have a new way to play that as well? Or are you still like, that's expensive, I'm not touching that just yet? Because valid.
It's still expensive enough that I'm going to shy away from it. But if they do because they haven't announced any of the physical details of the new version of the game, but if they do a physical version of the new game that's coming out and it comes with the drum peripheral, I will buy that. Or if they make them again, because they'll obviously be cheaper than, because the reason it's so expensive is because you're having to import it from Korea essentially, or you know, overseas somewhere, and that's what makes it so expensive. Like, especially on top of like import charges and stuff too, right? So that's why I'm kind of waiting on it, like biding my time with it. But I have actually found Taiko Drum Master on PS2, so I might actually buy that because that's like pretty cheap, and you can get for like a nice like complete copy that comes with the drum kit. So I might actually do that. But it's got different songs in it too. But it's got a weirder selection too, because it's got less of the Japanese songs and more American songs, which kind of bums me out a little bit, because one of the things I love about Taiko Drum Master is playing some of my favorite anime songs or J-pop songs or vocal line tracks and stuff like that. Like it's actually like a really nice mix of songs. And what got me excited about the new version that they announced for Switch yesterday is that they have like a subscription pass coming with like 500 songs for it. So I can only imagine like what songs are going to include in that. And I'm excited to check that out. But that's not PlayStation related. I'm just playing more Taiko Drum Master. That's all you need to know, because again, there's stuff we can't talk about yet. But there you go. All right, let's slam the brakes on this conversation. It is time for some breaking news, and lots of news stories this week. I was not actually expecting this, but a lot of it is like PlayStation adjacent stuff, but I still think it's important for us to talk about it here. Starting with an interview with Digital Trends, Uncharted director Ruben Fleischer confirmed that he's working with PlayStation on an adaptation of Jak and Daxter. So funny enough, like 3 days ago, there was an interview with Tom Holland where he was talking about like what character he would love to play next. And he talked about the idea of being in a Jak and Daxter movie with him being Jak. And then 2 days later, we get confirmation from Ruben Fleischer that they're working on Jak and Daxter movie. So it's like, what? How did this all come together just out of the blue, out of these random interviews? Like, what, Matt, what do you think about this one? This is a weird story.
So a couple things come to mind when we're talking about this. PlayStation and Sony must be feeling pretty good about Ruben's adaptation of Uncharted if they're continuing to work with him on more PlayStation properties. So regardless of what that quality of the movie is, they must feel decent about it. The next thing that kind of comes to mind, like you mentioned with Tom Holland, it's interesting because he was talking about doing like a darker, weirder version. He called it like an A24 version, which is a publisher, not a movie maker, but do your thing. So I welcome the new overlords of Chris Pratt as Jak and Tom Holland as Daxter, because they get cast in everything nowadays, and that's what we're going to get. But I think as a property, Jak and Daxter is a cool one to kind of mess with. It's weird. It's really out there, especially with the mix of like a very fantastical first entry and then a very like it gets darker and weirder as it goes. So I think they have like a lot of room to make this into an interesting adaptation. Will they? That's a different question entirely. So I don't know, dude. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this one.
And the wise words of Ryan Turford, it could be anything. It could be anything at this point, Matt. Because I am excited to see whatever this would be. I would imagine it's they would probably go in the direction of it being maybe an animated film rather than a live action Jak and Daxter if they were to actually attempt it. I think it would make more sense with just the way that world is to do maybe an animated film versus a live action film, because Uncharted, that makes sense because it's based off real life, so it makes sense. Whereas like the world of Jak and Daxter, I think would be harder to replicate in real life, but you never know, with the advances of CG and whatnot. But yeah, going back to your point about how the confidence with Uncharted to give them another project, this speaks volumes about that, and I'm actually curious to know how reviews are going to favor for Uncharted, because we're not going to have to wait long, Matt. I think it's out this week or next week, because it's out on the 15th, I think is when
right
it's
around
opening.
the corner, something like that.
Yeah. So we'll be hearing about how that movie does soon and what people think about it. I know I'm not rushing to the theater to go get it. I mean, I didn't buy, the Uncharted upgrade edition that comes with a movie ticket, let alone the fact that here in Ontario, things are kind of a mess when it comes to the movie theaters anyways right now. So, we're not really rushing out to go see movies at the moment. So, I'm curious to know more about this. But I love the idea of them maybe exploring the Jak and Daxter space, and maybe Tom Holland had something to do with that. Maybe why they're doing that. But
I don't know why, Ryan, but in my Thursday midday brain, I never even considered this to be an animated movie, and I far prefer that. Like if they go like they did the Ratchet and Clank movie?
Yeah.
And like I don't think I watched it, but I remember hearing it was fine. If they go in that direction and they make it like a more CGI, like an actual animated movie, I'm much more likely to enjoy that than I think if they go live action, which I very much hope they don't.
Yeah, because especially with all the weird aliens and stuff like that, I can't even imagine what some of those would even look like in real life, or at least doing live action stuff. Or they might obviously do the Sonic thing where Jak and Daxter get pulled into our world, and then that wouldn't be good. That would be terrible too. So it's like that's why I would much prefer it be like an animated film if they do Jak and Daxter. But yeah, we'll see. And now I gave Matt some unpleasant memories. So there you go. All right. Next news story. So there's a new update that's live now for PlayStation 5 beta members that includes the following features. And again, none of these are really like earth-shattering things, but there's some interesting new updates here, starting with open and closed parties, voice chat reporting feature update. So basically, if you if someone is harassing you on voice chat, you can actually report like a voice sample now, which is interesting. An update to share play, where essentially you don't they're changing the way the share button works with share play. Voice chats are now being called parties, and they're getting like a simplified chat menu along with it. You're able to filter games in your collection now by genre. So you can only select it by like recently played or, by letters, but now you can actually filter it by different genres now. You're also going to be able to pin 5 games to the home screen, which I think is actually a really good move. And then they're going to increase the amount of games on the home screen to 14 games instead of 10, I believe, is what the limit is now. So giving you some more space to play with your home screen and allowing you to customize it a little bit. Like if you're someone like Ryan Turford and you're playing Final Fantasy 14 all the time, or if you just want it pinned, so it's always there ready to go, it's your first icon. I have the ability to do that now. So Matt, what do you think about some of these changes? Because I think there's some interesting stuff here, but nothing, mind blowing.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. There's some cool quality of life stuff. Like the open and closed parties, I think is a nice touch, along with the filtering your games by genre. For me, none of this really makes me too stoked outside of when I actually get my hands on it to play with these features to see how they might change my experience. I do agree with you that the pinning 5 games, I think, is my favorite part of this update so far, just because, again, you can just kind of make sure things are there for whatever reason, in case you're jumping through some games or even if you're downloading stuff or whatever it is that you're doing. I like that you can pin them now finally. But outside of that, I think this is fine. This is a cool update. There's some interesting stuff here, but nothing, like you said, nothing that's really getting me super hyped.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing crazy here. It's fine though. All right.
It's fine.
Next news story, and this one we talked about a lot on the Xbox Drive yesterday, so I'm kind of going to save a lot of my thoughts on this simply because, if you want to hear my full thoughts, Sean and I talked about this at great length yesterday, but this pertains to PlayStation, even though it's a Microsoft story, but we should talk about it. So in a Microsoft.com blog post, Microsoft President Brad Smith wrote about basically changes that are coming to the Microsoft Store ahead of the Activision Blizzard deal. He stated, quote, and this is kind of a long quote, so stick with me here. Microsoft will continue to make Call of Duty and other popular Activision Blizzard titles available on PlayStation through the term of the existing agreements with Activision, and we have committed to Sony to continue to make them available on PlayStation beyond the existing agreements and into the future so that Sony fans can continue to enjoy the games that they love. We are also interested in taking similar steps to support Nintendo's successful platform. We believe this is the right thing to do for the industry, for gamers, and for our business. So it sounds to me, and first of all, this whole blog post, this is just the section that references the Activision Blizzard stuff. In this blog post, he's basically talking about trying to make the Windows and Xbox store available everywhere and as seamless as possible, to the point where it sounds like they're trying to open up the Microsoft ecosystem to be on every device that supports any of their content, whether it's, the apps they support or movies and TV that they support or games, which maybe opens the door again to Bethesda stuff, maybe coming back to PlayStation in the future. It opens the door to possible Microsoft franchises coming to PlayStation in the future. But Matt, what do you think about this blog post from the Microsoft president?
I really think this is interesting, because we already knew that contractually they already committed to following through. So I don't really think that is at all a surprise. The verbiage still is still very interesting for me, because this doesn't tell me with 100% confirmation that Call of Duty will continue to exist in its current form on all platforms moving forward. Now, they're obviously want it to, whether again, if that's going to mean that Call of Duty is going to be free on Game Pass, but you have to pay full price on PlayStation, whether that means that they're trying to get Game Pass in more spaces and places, if they can push onto PlayStation and Nintendo, I definitely think they would, jump at the opportunity. So I'm happy that the big three in Sony, PlayStation, and Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft seem to be playing nicer than ever before, because I kind of think they almost have to now with, the consolidation of the industry that we're seeing on a pretty wide scale, and apparently more of it coming later on this year. A lot of these games are massive money makers. They have a lot of market share on other devices. They have to kind of accept the fact that things may have to change. And I'm really curious, because Microsoft is obviously speaking a lot of the right things right now. They're saying a lot of the right things to keep, fans happy, regardless of what the game is. Because again, if they went out and said, yes, the next 2 Call of Duties are going to come to PlayStation, but after that, you're not getting anything. I wonder how that might affect sales. Will people get upset? Will people get angry? Would people, pick up Call of Duty day one like they usually do on PlayStation? For me, this is a bright spot, and I'm hopeful that things will kind of continue on with just tweaks in Game Pass and availability and stuff like that. But this also puts PlayStation in a position where if they are the first ones to say, you know what, forget it, Destiny 3 is exclusive on PlayStation, they are going to look like the biggest bad guys out of all of the situation, especially if Microsoft is genuinely trying to work with them in that respect. So I think this almost shoehorns PlayStation in a position that where they're going to have to play nicer. They're going to have to open up. Look at MLB The Show is now fully cross-play across all devices, right? Which is awesome, because these are things that gamers have been asking for a long, long time. But this isn't like the 100% seal. This isn't signed and put away. Okay, we're going to be good forever. I think we're good for now, and I think we could be good going forward. But I still do think that anything could happen in the next few years between now and when the initial contract ends. But I don't know, Ryan, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you hit the nail on the head, where I think it is uncertain, especially if there's a change in leadership at Microsoft, because you never know, they could turn around and change things. Just like what we talked about with the Bungie acquisition, where even though Jim Ryan right now is saying all the right things with Bungie as far as keeping it multi-platform, I mean, there's the possibility that whoever takes over from Jim Ryan in the future decides to completely change that. So you're right. Even though it sounds like everything is good on paper, but who knows how the companies change in 5, 10, 15 years, or how the landscape of games even change at this point, going in the future. But it sounds like, at least to me, with the current leadership at Microsoft, I expect that they wouldn't put out a blog post like this if they didn't mean it to be true, as far as, anything that's coming from Activision Blizzard from in the next 5 years at least will be multi-platform on PlayStation. And that includes if they do a new Crash game or a new Spyro game or Tony Hawk or Guitar Hero, because they did talk about the idea of reviving something like Guitar Hero. I imagine they want to have that on as many platforms as possible, especially too. It was really interesting that they mentioned Switch in here as well, because that's a platform that Microsoft doesn't currently support, and neither does a lot of the studios that they have under their umbrella. So it's interesting that it sounds like they want to expand their business on Switch. So I imagine this means we get more Switch stuff down the line. But I think they released this as an opportune time as well, because of the FTC is going to be examining the purchase of Activision Blizzard fairly soon. And I don't think this is, any sign that they're worried about their deal. They've already said plenty of times on the record that they're not worried about FTC kind of looking into things, and to be fair and just kind of throw all the facts out there. I mean, the fact that the FTC is examining the deal, that's not, an uncommon thing. In fact, because it's a deal of this magnitude, it would either be them or like, I think it's like the Department of Trade and Commerce in the United States would have to examine it. It'd have to be one of the two, and it just happened to be the FTC this time. So, I mean, for the most part, I think that's kind of the reason they have to put this out there as well.
Sure.
Just so that, like if there was any question that the FTC could throw at them, be like, hey, by the way, you're not actually doing this to kind of, cut out competition or anything like that. Like this is put out there probably to show that they don't have intention of doing that. So
Well said.
Either way, we'll see. Again, this is still all like future stuff, especially because like we won't know the specifics of anything until at least when the deal is finalized next year. So, all right. Next news story. A release date has been announced for the PS5 version of Grand Theft Auto 5. It will launch on March 15th. In addition, confirmation of Grand Theft Auto 6 being underway has been provided, and we should be hearing about more info about the game when they are ready to provide that info. Again, they basically had a blog post over on Rockstar's website that talked about, GTA 5 is coming out and the date that's coming out. So no big surprise. We kind of already knew that the GTA 5 port to PS5 was coming out next month. But I think the bigger news story here is the fact that they're actually acknowledging that Grand Theft Auto 6 exists and that it's quote unquote well underway, which means, probably it'll be out in like 3 or 4 years at this point. But Matt, what do you think about this news that Grand Theft Auto 6 actually exists and they're ready to actually start talking about it?
Yeah, I feel like they're just kind of saying it now because people have been asking constantly, where's GTA 6, where's GTA 6? So like for me, this kind of feels more like, yes, we're working on it, but you're not going to hear about it for, like you said, another 2 or 3 years until it's actually ready to come out. The PS5 version of GTA 5, yeah, it's fine. Like whatever. It's more GTA 5. That thing continues to sell no matter where they put it. So I'm sure it's going to sell well on PlayStation 5. And I mean, I think GTA Online is going to be free for the first few months on PS5 as well.
Yeah.
So that's also a thing. If you want to keep playing GTA Online and you don't have GTA 5, I guess you can, jump in and take a look. Which is cool. I mean, I'm glad that they're doing that. But yeah, this for me is just like, for me, I think it's just more, again, just keeping people quiet, just shutting people up, being like, yes, we're working on it. You'll see it when you see it. And I don't think we're going to see it again anytime soon. Yeah,
it's going to be a long while, but at least we're making some progress. Because again, it's almost been 10 years since Grand Theft Auto 5 actually came out 2 generations ago. And I think it's at least progress of some kind. They're at least willing to say, hey, by the way, we've actually got something new coming next. Because, I mean, for the longest time, they weren't really to say anything about what they're doing next. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were going to work on, a different franchise, or maybe we're going to do like a Red Dead 3 or something like that, rather than, moving on to get Grand Theft Auto 6. But I'm glad that this finally means probably with the next generation of consoles, or probably at the end of the PS5 generation, is when I expect Grand Theft Auto 6 to come out. So it'll probably be the swan song, kind of like Grand Theft Auto 5 was for the 360 generation or the PS3 generation. Kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we'll be playing GTA 6 until 2040. So
yeah, exactly. God, we're gonna be so old by then, Matt. All right, next news story, and kind of our last one for the show. Of course, there was a Nintendo Direct yesterday, Matt, and lots of Nintendo only stuff was shown, but there were 2 PlayStation related things shown at the show, and I wanted to bring them up here, starting with Chrono Cross, a Radical Dreamers edition, coming to PlayStation 4 on April 7th. This is going to be a collection that includes Chrono Cross as well as the Radical Dreamers text adventure game that was on the Satellaview, which was basically this like internet service for the Super Famicom in Japan only, which would explain why like no one has really played this game. And it's basically like a prequel that basically a text adventure prequel that basically ties together the universe of Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. I mean, they do that in the game itself, but the Radical Dreamers explains it much better and kind of gives a lot more context. And it's meant to be played before you actually played Chrono Cross. So I don't know why they made it, a Satellaview exclusive, but that's just the way that turned out. And then The other thing, and I'll get to your opinions in just a second, Klonoa Fantasy Reverie Series Collection is coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 on July 8th. This is a collection that includes both Klonoa 1 and Klonoa 2. Klonoa 1 in particular, I'm very glad to see this here because that game is stupidly expensive on PlayStation 1. I think it's like $300 if you want a complete copy of it because it's so rare. It's one of the more expensive PlayStation 1 games. But you can currently buy it on PlayStation 3 for $5. So there is that as well. But either way, pretty cool collection to see. Let's bring in, though, famous Seamus, who asks directly about this. Number one, he asks, how excited are you to play both Klonoa and Chrono Cross when they come back? And number two, even if it was announced at a Nintendo Direct, they're still coming to PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Granted, Klonoa will come later. So, Matt, I need to know your opinion on these. What's your excitement level on these two releases?
I'm excited that they're both coming back, but neither one of these is really speaking volumes to me. I still need to play Chrono Trigger. It's on my list. And like, I feel like I need to play that before I play Chrono Cross, even though like, I understand that it's not like a direct one-to-one sequel. Like I want to finally play Chrono Trigger properly. I'm glad this is coming back. Clinoa for me, I've never played it. I have no real affinity for it. I remember always seeing it at like Rogers and Blockbuster growing up and being like, maybe I'll rent this time and then picking something else. I'm glad that these are coming back for people who, are excited about them. But right now, the hype check for me on both of them is kind of like, yeah, it's cool. I'm glad that they're doing it, but it's not 100% my thing. What this does tell me, though, is that more and more it seems like that massive NVIDIA leak from a few months ago is true. Which is huge. The fact that we're getting more and more confirmed from that. But yeah, I think this is cool. What about you, Ryan? Are you stoked on both of these?
Yeah, and actually to your point about the NVIDIA leak, like both of these games are on it. So yeah, I mean, and not only that, but we've seen tons of evidence already that, I mean, this pretty much confirms a Final Fantasy Tactics remake is coming, which was on there as well. So I'm very excited about that. But as far as these two games, first of all, I'll start with Klonoa. I think this is actually an awesome collection to have because Klonoa is actually a really fun 2D platformer that utilizes some 3D elements, but for the most part, it's a standard 2D platformer that's actually really fun. I actually really enjoyed that game on PlayStation 1 because I did buy the digital copy for PlayStation 3 and played it on Vita. That's how I actually played it for the first time. Just because, again, like what makes that game so expensive on PlayStation 1 is it had a really low print run, so it's actually really hard to find. And it's just one of those things where I didn't get to play it back in the day because I never actually physically saw a copy of it on store shelves, but during the PlayStation 1 era. And then Chrono Cross, I'm much more excited about. Chrono Cross is actually one of my all-time favorite games. I'm very excited to replay it. In fact, I've been jonesing to replay Chrono Cross for a while now, but after I saw the NVIDIA leak, I'm like, maybe I'm going to just hold off because I know kind of a remastered version is probably coming, and I'm glad that I waited, especially because this ties in Radical Dreamers, the text adventure. I'm super stoked to be able to play through that for the first time and then play Chrono Cross. And to your point, Matt, yes, for the most part, you really don't need knowledge of Chrono Trigger to play this game, but there are specific moments that tie back to Chrono Trigger that will hit way harder if you've played Chrono Trigger. So I definitely think you should at least play Chrono Trigger first before playing this. So folks at home, if you've never played Chrono Trigger, play that first, then play this. Even though there isn't really a good way to play it nowadays, unless you want to play the awful Steam port, I guess, or if you want to dig out your PlayStation 3, because you can play it on Vita, because it is a PlayStation 1 classic. So it is available there, but
I think I have it on Vita.
Probably. I think it was actually on PlayStation Plus at one point.
You just unlocked a very lost memory in a corner of my brain being like, I'm going to download this because I'm going to play it. And then I just didn't. I think I have Ryan. I'm going to check that later. Thank you. You should. Yeah. Cause all the PS1 classics are on Vita. And that's one of the ones that was even one of the approved ones. So you could actually even buy it on the Vita store without having to download it to your PlayStation 3 and then connect it with a cable and then, throw it on the Vita that way. Like Metal Gear Solid is like that in particular. So yeah, super stoked that Chrono Cross is coming out. I think the price is good on it too. I think it's $30 Canadian for this collection. So this is like an instant buy for someone like me. I'm very, very stoked to replay Chrono Cross on PlayStation 4. So there you go. All right, let's let some of our friends into the car with us. It is time for the carpool. Folks at home, if you'd like to have your question read on the carpool, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, if you're watching us on YouTube and you have a question, just leave us a question in the comment of the video and we'll answer it on the show. Additionally, we put up a Twitter post on Twitter
over at Yumi Capri's every single Wednesday, except for yesterday when I was super busy and totally forgot, and I posted it this morning instead. Or likewise, if you join the Yumi Capri Discord, it's free to join. The link's in the show notes. And you can leave your question there as well. Just make sure to tag either myself or Matt in there and say it's a question for the show, and we'll answer it on the show. Just like Todd Oxtra at Toxtra did on Twitter. And he asked the question, based on the lower projections for PlayStation 5 due to chip shortages, do you expect PlayStation VR 2 to be delayed as well because of the chip shortages, plus a lower install base? Do you also expect it to be backwards compatible with PlayStation VR's library despite the different tech? So first of all, Todd, I'm very sad to report this, but when they announced PlayStation VR 2, they actually confirmed that it will not become backwards compatible with PlayStation VR titles because of the way the tech is different. So because of the way, like there's going to be the way the lip bar sensor works in the controller, to the way that it interacts with things, it's not going to work, especially because you have to remember with the new headset, you're not going to have a camera or anything like that. And I think just the way it would have to read the games is so fundamentally different that the games would have to be patched in a very specific way. That I think that the developers will probably just re-release the games instead. So they already did confirm that it's not backwards compatible. So I would just take that idea out of it. But what do you think about this question, Matt? Because I don't know how much the chip shortages is really going to affect PlayStation VR, but what do you think about Todd's question?
I think this is an interesting one because I would hope that them seeing what was going on with the PS5 and in the development of PSVR 2, especially because, again, we don't have a release date. We just know that like they're probably starting to make them now if they hadn't started recently. I would hope in the last couple of years with them watching what was going on with the PS5 that they may have switched things up a little bit, or at least maybe planned for this in a way that, like, you know, it's not going to be a massive brawl trying to get one of these things for the first 2 years of its lifespan. So I think it could affect it, but I hope PlayStation pivoted in some way, shape, or form if it were to be an issue for the chips that they're using, because I'm not techie enough to understand exactly the innards and what they're using and whether those are being affected by shortages or not. But I hope that won't be the case. As for the backwards compatibility stuff, I really hope that I'm sure the bigger titles that, like the Beat Sabers, the Super Hots, the ones that continue to sell month to month, will get patched, or like you mentioned, maybe just a new version that I hope would be free to existing owners. Similarly, like we get like the PS4 to PS5 games as well that hopefully they're not going to charge you to bring it over to PSVR 2.
Or it's a $10 upgrade. Yeah, they'll do that too.
Yeah, they very well could. Maybe they'll bundle in DLC and stuff. Who knows? But I'm really excited for PSVR 2. I still hope that we see it again sometime soon. But I don't know, Ryan, where are you at on this? Yeah,
actually, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. Like, I think like what's going to happen if developers patch their games, they'll probably list it as like a PlayStation 5 version of Beat Saber as an example, rather than a PlayStation 4 version, and then you'll upgrade the same way, whether it's a free upgrade or it's a paid upgrade. I think that's the only way that this is going to happen, from the way that they've talked about how the tech is done differently. And they're not willing to do it kind of on, Sony's side anyways, to kind of make all that stuff work. So as far as, the projections, as far as how many happen, I think honestly, they're not going to delay it because of the numbers, because this is already a niche product as it is. It'd be different if like they're only able to produce like 1,000 of these things and they're not able to get like enough of them out to kind of satisfy, what they would expect to be able to put out as far as the number of headsets. Then I would see them maybe delaying the headset to next year. But to be fair, can you really call it a delay when they haven't actually told us when it's coming out at this point? Right. So, I mean, who knows when this was even supposed to come out in the first place. But I think that I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like we're still so far out from even learning more about it that, we'll hear about it when they're ready to talk about it. And I'm hoping it doesn't get delayed, because I know people are actually pretty excited about PlayStation VR 2. But I imagine like whenever they do release, they'll be very hard to get, because they won't make enough of them. But it'll be like kind of echoing what happened with PlayStation VR's launch, like the originals, where they didn't really produce enough of them at the beginning, and they were very high priced. Like they weren't sitting on shelves for at least a long time. It took a long time for them to hit shelves as well in the same way. So yeah, you never know. All right. And then last question comes to us once again from Famous Seamus over on the Discord, who asked the question: if The PlayStation 7 indie previews are done when the show starts recording. What were your favorite games shown today during the indie preview? So here's the thing, Matt. Normally we would have done this as a news story, and then I would just, interjected famous Seamus's question in there. But honestly, when I was looking through a lot of these, and I don't think they were fully updated with all the games yet by the time we started recording. I haven't gone back and checked the PlayStation blog since we started recording, Matt, but I wasn't really seeing anything that was super newsworthy. Like they weren't announcing any new games coming to PlayStation 5 that they hadn't announced previously. It sounds like, we got like the addition of Splinter in Shredder's Revenge. And then we got more details about like the grass and the environments in Moss. But beyond that, I don't know exactly what else we're really seeing from this that was super interesting to talk about. Obviously, if I was to talk about the game I'm most excited about from what I've seen there, it's obviously Shredder's Revenge. Like that's just a no-brainer for someone like me who loves classic turtle games. I mean, I have a turtle arcade machine in the other room, so I'm actually very excited for that game. But what do you think about this, Matt? I know you're doing some digging.
Yeah, so I looked it up, and so just to quickly go over it. Yeah, we saw some more stuff about Moss Book 2. We got a confirmation that Animal Well is coming to PS5. Again, like you mentioned, Splinter is coming to TMNT, Shredder's Revenge. Post Void is coming to PS5 and PS4 this spring. Salt and Sacrifice is launching May 10th. Samurai Gun 2 is coming to PS5, and Hello Neighbor 2 is coming to PS4 and PS5. So this is kind of round out what those 7 announcements were. As for me, I there's actually some cool stuff in here. I think I'm excited about Moss Book 2. I still need to play the first one, and I'm going to definitely before this comes out because this has been one of my must play titles for a while, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But the game looks adorable, and I'm excited that the second one is just around the corner. TMNT Shredder's Revenge continues to look awesome. That game looks so cool. Animal Well is not for me. It's like this horror-esque but not horror action platformer, but weird.
It's a weird looking game.
Of things. Yeah. Post Void is not my thing at all whatsoever. Neither is what is it? Salt and Sacrifice. Neither one of those are for me.
Yeah.
Neither is Hello Neighbor 2. Samurai Gun 2. I kept hearing about Samurai Gun and I've never played it, but watching the trailer for this new one actually makes me kind of interested to check it out. And I don't know. I love these character crossovers because they talked about how the crewmate from Among Us, Anna from Spelunky, and Minute from Minute are all joining Samurai Gun 2. I love these little crossovers where characters are showing up in other games. I think it's super cool. And again, it just makes me more inclined to check this out. So I think out of the ones that we saw today, definitely Moss Book 2 is the highlight for me, with Shredder's Revenge and Samurai Gun 2 kind of coming in next.
Okay. Yeah. Beyond, Shredder's Revenge, Samurai Gun 2 is the only other one that really stuck out to me for the same reasons you talked about, where I like the idea of having an indie crossover game like that. I mean, it just, any second from now, I'm expecting, Yacht Club Games to announce that Shovel Knight is part of it, because Shovel Knight was a part of so many, indie crossover games like this that I wouldn't be surprised if that gets added in there. But yeah, just like you, I think there's a lot of stuff here that's just not really for my jam, especially stuff with Hello Neighbor. Never really cared about Hello Neighbor before. And that's one that we already knew about. Just like Monster Well as well was something that they had already announced for PlayStation 5. So it's one of those things where not a lot of new announcements today, but some interesting looking games nonetheless anyways.
You know what, Ryan? I have a quick question actually before we wrap, because I know we have a couple more minutes. Why do you think we haven't seen a February state of play out of them? If they kind of seem to be drip feeding us a lot of information between this indie stuff, between Gran Turismo, even Ghostwire Tokyo. To me, it seems like this could have been a shorter a shorter state of play with all of this kind of round together. Do you think that they just don't feel like any of this is substantial enough to get its a state of play? Or do you think that they're I don't know why they're drip feeding things like this?
Yeah, I think it was just because in these articles, we just didn't have any video except for Shredder's Revenge. I think was the only one that I saw that had video. So maybe it's just these games are only in the ability really to have screenshots rather than being shown off in a video presentation. I think that might be the big difference as to why we're not seeing that. Whereas not only that, but I feel like they really wanted to put the focus on Gran Turismo 7. And kind of give it its due. So rather than doing 2 state of plays, one that's just all about Gran Turismo 7 and then one that's, separate with a lot of indie stuff, I think that's why they decided to go this approach too, where it's just, we're not getting a lot of video about these anyways. There's no new trailer for Moss 2 or anything like that. So I think that has a lot to play into it anyways, as to why they decided to do that. Combined with the fact that they might just not have a lot of third-party stuff that they could talk about, especially because they could have maybe announced one or two of these things that we saw during the Nintendo Direct, but I mean, Nintendo got to them first. So it might just be one of those things where they don't have third-party stuff to talk about yet either. They obviously don't need to show Horizon again, I guess. Like the game's out. I mean, the game's actually out like next week. So yeah, I think that they don't really need to do anything else with that. So I think that's the mindset from Sony. Especially because like, yes, even though State of Plays seem, simple to put together, there's probably like a large enough team that actually works on State of Plays in order to organize them and edit them together and getting trailers together and stuff like that, that it's probably a big enough ask where they probably don't do them for no reason anyways, or just until they have like a tipping point of like content to show. And I just don't think maybe these 7 games had enough maybe to show it at State of Play to carry it on its own.
Fair. I like it.
All right, Matt, we got to go. But before we go, Matt plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt. You can always find me over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter. We currently have both the mental health series and a Black History Month series going to kind of, alongside the normal podcast. So come hang out.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Capriz, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 38 of the PlayStation Drive, and we're out. The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you to our over 70 patrons, starting with our premium producers, Dallas Ford, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can check out his new album, In My Element, over on Apple Music, as well as his website, and Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. Our platinum producers are Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and our gold members, Argo, Brandon Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, Tony Baker, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support, and if you're interested in joining the Patreon, head over to patreon.com/Yumi Capri and pick the tier that's right for you.